I think we're here. Hey.
Hi.
We just had a very silly situation, so yeah, let's get it out now.
I made it.
You know. Okay. Hi everyone. Welcome to the Power of ERGs panel at Unidos. Thank you for being here. I'm Joe Tirado. I'm extremely honored to be joined by this incredible group of industry professionals to talk about how they're making games and making tech better, more inclusive, just better overall. So thanks to everyone for being here. I also want to just take a second, and I mentioned this earlier privately. This panel's filled to the brim with some badass women. So shout outs to all of you for being here. I'm gonna try and just stay out of the way while you all just be awesome. Okay, cool. So we should do intros. I guess that was mine. You don't really need to know much more about me. Let's go around and introduce everyone.
Sure. I'll start. I'm Coraly. I'm a UX designer at Niantic. I'm also part of the committee for Nianticos, which is our Latin American, Latinx community ERG.
Hi, everybody. I'm Edaleen. I'm a community manager at Blizzard, and I'm also part of the communications team for our multicultural network.
Hi, I'm Erica. I work with Sledgehammer Games. I'm an admin assistant, and I work closely with Kaleidoscope, which is our diversity committee.
I'll go next. Hi, I'm Gabriela, Ponce or Gabby, and I am a producer for Turn 10 Studios. We make Forza, and I work on the tools team there. And my other job is working and leading the Team Xbox Latinx community as a co-lead with my boy Carlos Sanchez, who you'll meet later tonight when we play Fall Guys. But yeah, that's me.
I'm Jen Ashiru. Hey, y'all. I'm a games producer at Private Division, and I'm also one of the board leads for Black Take Two. So, yeah, and which is part of Take Two's mission to promote more diversity and inclusion. So.
Hi everyone, I'm Victoria Caña, and I am a producer at Wizards of the Coast on Magic the Gathering. I'm also the co-founder and co-lead of Wizards of Color and Allies, which is our employee resource group. And then outside of work, I'm also a game designer. I launched my first game on Kickstarter earlier this year called Gladius, so that was really fun. It raised over $100,000. So I was excited to make that game, and it's available now. So designer and producer.
Nice.
Nice. All right, cool. We got everyone. So I want to get something out of the way right off the bat. I don't work at, I don't participate in ERG, but I do participate in Latinx and Gaming. I'm one of the co-founders. But I wanted to just talk about, for people who maybe don't know what an ERG is or what its place is in the workplace. Does anyone want to sort of lead us in that discussion about what an ERG is and just its importance in a company?
I can start a little bit on that one. ERG literally means Employee Resource Group. I guess a good way to think of it is a club, but it's bigger and more impactful than a club. Typically, our ERGs are spaces where people who have things in common or who want to contribute to certain communities, certain interests, can come together to just work together in the company to make things better for your employees, either professionally, personally in some points as well, but also impacting the communities outside of your companies. I mean, that's kind of like the TR didn't read version. If anyone else wants to add to that.
Yeah, sure, I'll add that. I too saw them as a club when I first joined them, and I've joined a lot of them at Blizzard. it offered me a chance to feel part of like a bigger community. I was the only woman in my very small team. So when I joined the Women at Blizzard, being able to see women um, all throughout the company and with like had been here for years was really meaningful for me. Now that I'm part of the leadership of one, I've actually come to understand more the power that they have in shaping studios and in shaping the industry. They're a great resource for advocacy. Sometimes, I mean, it's undeniable that the industry has an issue with diversity. We have issue finding diverse talent. We have issues retaining that diverse talent, and we also have issues when it comes to representation within our games. So these employee resource groups are actually a great way to start giving feedback to leadership about, you know, what matters to these groups and what changes need to happen internally. And because it's a big group, you have multiple people in them. You kind of tend to amplify the voice of your members. So as opposed to just one person raising concerns or, you know, sending feedback, it's an entire group.
Yes.
See,
No, yeah, that was like a perfect answer. Exactly. I agree.
We can't hear you, Joe.
you mute.
Oh,
no, Joe.
I'm back. I'm back. Sorry. I was commenting that everyone's so polite. It's very nice. So the thing that came out of there that I thought was really important was the fact that it helps you feel like other people around you. A lot of times in gaming spaces, especially for people of color or just different groups, you don't necessarily work with people every day, or it's a big company and there's 500 people and you're working with your team and you're not exposed to the other people there. So does anyone want to kind of cover how ERGs can kind of help expose you to other people at the company a little bit more than kind of how Edaleen raised? Like, what are y'all doing right now to kind of do that?
Yeah, I can talk a little bit because did somebody else want to go?
No, go ahead. Go, Victoria.
Oh, okay. So Wizards of Color and Allies is a group that I co-founded last year, and our mission is to cultivate a Wizards community where people of color can thrive and are represented in our products. And the whole reason that we started this ERG is because like at our studio, I think we have somewhere between 500 to 1,000 people. And when I was new at work, I wanted to connect with other people who had similar interests as me, also who had similar background as me. And I realized that we were all meeting informally because we wanted to talk about different issues in the industry that we saw. And somebody at our company approached me and said, well, it's really great that you guys are meeting. Maybe you guys should form an official group like an ERG. And at our company, we had an LGBTQ group. We had a Women of Wizards group. We had other groups, like a D&D club and like a Magic the Gathering draft club and stuff like that. But there was nothing really for people of color. So me and one of my coworkers, since this was something that was important to us, we decided to create that group because we wanted to extend this small group and small community that we had within our own department, and we wanted to make it available to everybody else at the company because not everyone else has the luxury of immediately going onto a team or going into a department where you can see other people like you. And so we wanted to offer that as a place for other people. And it's been a really great experience getting to see who all those people are at the company and hear about how they got into the industry, hear about what they're interested in, and just like finding friends and having community and also caring about the same issues.
Yeah, I feel like even just piggybacking off of that, it's been a really cool opportunity to see, because I mean, you work with people that you wouldn't necessarily work with. So you have producers, you have artists, you have all of these different people from all these different disciplines, and you're able to come together for whatever that common cause is. So I mean, if we're talking specifically like what we're celebrating now, or like this month, like Hispanic Heritage, we were able to kind of get that strike team together, do some fun things, bring some culture into things. bring awareness, but then also kind of have this informational space where, as a whole, the studio knows, okay, if I have questions or if, you know, I want to know what's going on, we know we can go to this group over here because they have this well-rounded, trying to be well-rounded input. So.
I think for me, like our group, the Black Take Two, we definitely formed like over the summer. So it's like it's a newer ERG, but it definitely came out of like the height of like the Black Lives Matter movement this summer. And a lot of us were just looking for a safe space, and everyone is based in different offices. Most of that crew is in New York. So for me, it was like a really good way to connect with other people like who have shared cultural experiences as me, and just kind of bond over what we were going through. Like, we were coming to work and having to work like as normal while we're seeing all of these terrible things in the news, and being able to just have a safe space to chat. Like, it just started off as like a safe space, like a bunch of us reaching out to Vanetta. She's like our director of talent acquisition, and asking like, is there a Black ERG, and like, how do we get one started? And now that we've started, like we've come together, and we've been just coming up with like a good structure for how our ERG looks, and then also just trying to balance the work with the fun. So like, doing things like to keep each other engaged, like like a game night. We're planning like a big homecoming kickoff at the end of this month to like just really celebrate the fact that we're here, we're Black and we're in video games. So yeah, I think it's just really cool to just have like a club, as most people put it here, like a club to just like celebrate who we are, and then also like internally and then also externally as well too. So yeah.
Yeah,
I
no,
think
that
one.
I,
Oh, go ahead, Gabriela.
yeah, no, I was just gonna say like a lot of those stories really resonate with me too. Like what Edaleen was saying earlier about how my perspective or my needs from this community evolved over time. I think when I joined, initially I was looking for community. Like, moving to Seattle, it's not the brownest place around. But I knew that I could find people somewhere. I just had to search, and eventually I found my way to the Xbox ERG, which ended up actually being founded around the time that I was joining Xbox. So that really helped out. But then when I joined as a leader, initially I thought, okay, well, this is, like you said, like a place to find community, make friends, throw events to bring us together, have a game night or something. And I think that's still really important. But I think for me, it's also become an opportunity to leverage the platform that I have as being a part of Xbox to both internally and externally. Internally, I've like our group is currently focused on helping not only form community, but also provide career development opportunities, be that by working with our HR representatives to find like classes or things like that to help us and our community members, rise in the ranks of Xbox, or just help people through like their own like day-to-day career things. Externally, I think our focus has changed over time too. I think it started with hosting an event at GDC where we could all gather, and we still do that, right? But we kind of like have evolved what that means too. Like this year, our focus has really been to say, hey, like we're all in quarantines, so how do we not all put like our own like web series together? Because I don't know about you, but I am like burned out, or like find myself being burned out by all the content. And so instead of creating our own like Xbox is presenting all this stuff for the Latinos, can we partner or amplify or otherwise, partner with other people like the Latinx and gaming group to make, something as amazing as Unidos Online even stronger, because we're bringing, the like not only the voices of our community, but also the power behind our companies to our broader community, which is, this Latinx and gaming and beyond. So I totally feel that on how it's interesting how a lot of us were like, when I find my people, but then we were like, but now how do I bring the people to the world? So I really dig that's a common thread. Like that makes me happy.
Yeah, I can speak a little for Nianticos. Like, we just formalized this summer, but Niantic has been involved with a lot of different Latinx initiatives since, well, from what I can remember last year, like we were involved in like the Latinx Games Festival. That's where I met Trinidad, and Trinidad is amazing. And I'm sure a few people here have met her. And as soon as she knew that I was like coming over to Niantic, she's like, yo, we got to talk. I'm like, what's going on?
The alliance, it's happening.
Yeah. And she really wanted me to help her build out like what the Latinx in Niantic group could be. We, before COVID, we had a lot of plans for GDC and stuff like that. Things happened. We know what those things are. And we tried to pivot to find other ways that we can still reach out to the community and still be able to bring in those goals and those missions that we had for those events. And I guess just do it ourselves. But what's really funny was that, and I don't know if you guys saw this same thing happen too, the ERGs that we have currently at Niantic, including ours, kind of started in Slack. Like there was a Slack group for Latinos, and then it just kind of evolved into like Nianticos. And there was another one for this week. We just had another one form. It started out as an accessibility ERG, and now they've formed and they're called Legend. And it's for differently able people and to provide perspective for the company and the products that we're building. But it's interesting. It always starts as like a Slack channel. Like, let's join in. Let's like, hey, everyone, because we're all spread out too. And at least in my experience, I'm typically the only Latina on all the teams that I've been on ever. With the exception of this team, the team that I'm on right now. There's 2 other Puerto Rican, and it's like, oh my God, where have you guys been all my life? And we have other people from Latin America as well on the team, and it's actually been the team with the biggest representation from Latin America that I've ever experienced, which blows my mind completely. But same thing, like we just all wanted to be able to unite and do something for the community. And really, I think that's one of our mission statements for Nianticos is like providing back to the community and representation as well.
Yeah, I think you mentioned something really important there that I wanted to bring up, that it covers the idea that, even something like Latinx in gaming, I'll relate it to ERGs, right? There was no one doing the thing yet, and the initiative for the thing just wasn't there unless someone went to someone higher up and said, hey, we have to do this now. And I think it's kind of a unique thing about the ERGs in the sense that, like, I think most of the companies you work for wanted to be very diverse and wanted to be very inclusive, but it kind of took the initiative of people working there to make it happen. And then it becomes, and maybe this is a good or a bad thing, I'd be curious to hear, you feel it's sort of a responsibility, a sort of a thing that you kind of put on yourself, and you say, hey, now I am responsible for feeling and advocating for and pushing for. How are y'all dealing with that at your studios? And are there people that you're working with higher up? And like, I'm just very curious to hear about that thing, because it's a very unique phenomenon, I think.
So Blizzard actually pairs networks with an executive sponsor. So it makes it really, really good because you have this person who is already invested in diversity, equity, and inclusion that's going to be there to be your advocate. And for us in particular, for the Multicultural Network, she has been an absolute champ when, when we went through this hard summer and the situation with Black Lives Matter. She became our absolute champion when it came to raising our needs to the rest of the executive team and to our president. So it's absolutely great, and it's something that I encourage anybody else who is looking to start an ERG at their company. Start talking to your manager, start talking to the leadership, and sell them on this idea. They're going to be your biggest ally, especially if you're looking to make changes at your studio. That's the way that you do it. When it comes to the pressure that you feel when you're representing other people, for me, it's immense. And I think it's a little bit compounded by the fact that, I just know the Latina experience, but my group is the multicultural network. So I represent people, I represent Black people, I represent people from all over the world that just so happen to work at Blizzard. So the way that I kind of cope by it is by acknowledging what I know and what I don't know. So when the Black Lives Matter situation was happening, I was looking to my co-chair and my chair to follow their leadership, because that was their experience, that was their reality. So it wasn't my job to, say, here's how I'm feeling about it. My job was to just be quiet, listen to what they were saying, and help them in whatever it was that they needed my assistance with.
I have to like, yeah, I love that. I was like, I have to agree with like, especially like getting an executive sponsor and then just really really saying what you need. It's difficult though. Like for me, I felt like this summer was like almost like kind of an awakening for me, like personally, like obviously like I want video games to be super diverse, inclusive, and obviously the equity piece. But it just was like I think I was nervous to speak up about it because I'm in spaces where I'm so often like the only person that looks like me. But man, I was riled up this summer. I'll tell you that. So like I was, I had a really good conversation with my manager. Her name is Carrie Toyama, and she helped me bring this conversation to a larger format to like our team. And I was fortunate that we had like an internal conversation about it. Then post that, I was like, okay, I need to go speak to some Black people at Take Two. How do I find this group? Like, I knew like of one other Black person like at my company specifically, and he's our senior QA manager. His name is Anthony. He's awesome. I just like called him up to just ask him how he was doing, and it was just like checking on people, like, and then he connected me with like Vanetta, and then we then got into a safe space group like Slack chat, like Coraly said, like getting into a Slack space, which was great. And then something that a big goal that we wanted statements from Take Two and from Private Division. Like those are our big things, and obviously other ways to continue the conversation. We didn't want it to just be like a one time, here's a statement, here's donations. We're like, we want this to be a continuous effort to really bring in more Black people, more other people from marginalized backgrounds, into the company. So that was like a lot of our like initial like how we even got started and organized as a group. We even had to go speak to the CEO and like just talk to him about like how we were feeling. We had to talk to him from like an emotional standpoint, and then also um, just from a business standpoint, like how we felt, and he was super empathetic. We had a great conversation, and from there, that's when, yeah, everything just kind of, we got our executive sponsor, and now we're just like on a roll and just trying to keep the momentum going, and we don't want people to forget, so yeah.
Yeah, when we were first starting out, and we had to figure out, okay, what's our mission statement, what's our values, and our company was really supportive because we just, we asked our VP of HR, hey, can we have this group? And she was like, yeah, you can start that group, and here's money, you have budget this year. And we're like, oh shoot, okay, great, we can do stuff. That was easier than we thought. But then came the question of, okay, well, what are we going to do? So they helped us connect with. There was this consultant, their group was called Diversity, and they had actually given our entire company unconscious bias training earlier that year. And they also offer like other types of consulting services. So we got to spend time with her, and she told us that like when ERGs are forming, there are three different directions, or like three different things that they could focus on: community, career development, and advocacy. And then there was a fourth one, which was like a hybrid, where it would be like a combination of the other three. And in the beginning, I was like super riled up because I was like, we need to do it all. You know, we have to make big changes right now, overnight. We should do all of those things, especially advocacy. And and what happened was during that time, I had more bandwidth. And then like later, you know, you have ups and downs at work where you're like either really busy or you're not as busy. And we realized that, you know, this is such a big systemic issue. And it's not just here within our company or within our industry. It's something that's like within our world. And one of the important things that people in our ERG, like our leadership, had to realize was that it's great that we're ambitious. It's great that we care, but we can't do everything ourselves. We really need to pick our battles and also figure out when we need to ask for help. And so one of the things that we'd always wanted was to have a head of diversity, equity, and inclusion, because we felt like, okay, well, we can only spend so much of our free time running this ERG, but in order for there to be real change, we need somebody to be here doing this full time, supporting us and just doing stuff on their own. And so we're really excited that like we're now hiring for that role. And so we can't wait for them to join, because there's a lot that you can do in an ERG. But like other people have said on this panel, it's best if you're able to partner with an executive sponsor or multiple executives, or just like have buy-in from your company, because it's not just you. Like our group is called Wizards of Color and Allies, and we weren't sure if we should just be Wizards of Color or if we should add allies. But we realized when we added allies, it was great because it allowed people who did not identify as a person of color to come join our group and attend our sessions. Like we had a cultural representation and game design workshop, which, yes, it's great for people of color to attend that because we don't know all the cultures. Like we only know our culture. And so it's helpful to have a workshop like that to understand other people's cultures. But we were like, please, you know, we need more white allies show up to this. And we also had a cultural appropriation workshop as well. And so it's been great that we've been able to do a combination of creating a space for people of color, but then also creating a space where people who want to be allies can learn about what they can do to make this industry and to make our company a better place for people of color.
Yeah, I think that's a huge part of this, right? And it's something that I learned over time. I thought like, oh, we'll just pull up our own bootstraps and we'll do everything on our own. But part of this conversation, and the part of why some conversations maybe online generally get so wild, is that people are coming to the table not necessarily willing to see the other person's side or understand where they're coming from. And you know, more often I technically am a community manager slash comms person, and I can't tell you the amount of times where I've come to someone and said, hey, I see where you're at, here's where I'm at, and that like toxic behavior or that closed offness kind of goes away. And it's cool to hear that that's happening internally at companies, because I think it's super important, right? That's how you change the culture of your company versus, you know, just being over here and then you guys are over there and then like we have this problem. So that's encouraging to hear about. Someone mentioned this, and it's a topic that we had listed, but how's everyone doing making this happen remotely?
You've had to get very creative.
Yes, very creative. I mean, I can talk a little bit about what Niantic is doing internally.
Please, yeah.
So we, like I mentioned before, we have a few ERGs. We have Nianticos, Wolfpack, Wakanda. So Nianticos is our Latin American or Latinx. Wolfpack is our women in non-gender conforming. Wakanda is our Black community at Niantic. Compass is our LGBT community, and then Legend, which is the one that just recently formed. We actually work together frequently between ERGs, and sometimes we do book clubs, and these are online book clubs, and once a month one of the ERGs either hosts it or we work together. Like this month we have we're going to be reading Sotomayor's book. I forgot her first name now.
Sonia.
The judge, Sonia. Thank you. We're going to be reading her book and discussing it. other things that we do are, the other day we had like paint nights, and we had someone like lead the paint night for us, and we were all like just talking and chilling and drawing together. And then outside of that, there's things like this, like what we're doing right now. And we reach out to our ERGs, specifically within Niantic. It's like, hey, there's an event coming up. It's going to be online, and we're looking for panelists, or we're looking for people that can mentor, or people that can contribute to the event. And again, kind of like bringing back and instilling that sense of community. And because Nianticos does focus back on giving to the community, that's how we typically do it. With the other ERGs, what they're doing is bringing in experts to really, what I'm seeing right now is a really big push towards allyship, and bringing in experts to kind of like provide that perspective and provide insights into how you can be a better ally. Because a lot of people want to be allies, they just don't know how. And I've seen that a lot in a lot of companies I've been at. Like, the intentions are there to really, really want to help in this change. They just have no idea what to do, or even if they're allowed to do it. So they've been bringing in experts, bringing in people that do teach others how to be allies. And we've been having just a bunch of different virtual events for that. And we just take an hour to discuss that. See what else we're doing. I mean, we're doing like a lot of things. It's so many.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I was gonna say, I feel like for us, we're an interesting group, and I only say that because being a part of Activision has their different employee networks, and then for Sledgehammer, it was created about, I want to say we're right at about a year, where it's actually run by our director of operations, so it was a really easy exec buy-in on that. But he kind of started this group where we were just really focused on our studio, not so much Activision as a whole, just to try to focus in on our culture and kind of what we were working on. And there's been a really interesting morph of what that meant. So when I first got there 11-ish months ago, it was more based on events. So, okay, what events can we put on within our studio, and what can we do within that? And then slowly as that time progressed, and then COVID hit, we had to get really creative. I actually had a lot of conversations with who's turned into a very good friend of mine, Alana Cole, who's part of our Melbourne studio. And she's really a really big supporter of the LGBTQ community. So between the two of us, we've kind of been pushing this plan of action. And it's one of those things where it's really trickled down from studio head, COO, all the way down, where it's like, okay, what actionable things can we actually do? Events are fun, but what else is there? And so that's really kind of stemmed out to this. It's interesting because we have like a marketing buy-in, and then we have our recruiters that are also buying in. And it's been this really cool thing where we have all of these people coming together that have been able to give a lot of input, a lot of valuable input that's all very diverse. But then instead of splitting off, the only split that we'll do is for very specific things. So, my friend Alana Cole kind of headed up our LGBTQ month, and so for Pride, she was all over. We did stuff with IGDA, and so we were able to get our marketing team on that and get those execs in there. With this, it was really cool. It was actually our marketing team that kind of brought us into Latinx. So Samantha, thank you. And so it's one of those things where it's almost become a partnership within a partnership. And I think that's been the coolest part, to see how everything has been able to evolve. So we're not stuck in this event planning to help our own studio, but it's been able to expand. So we've been working a lot with different mentorship stuff. I know Gabe Hernandez is working with you, Coraly, to try to figure out what that would look like for us. We've done stuff with Women in Games. More recently, we had like a game jam with Into Games. And so it's a lot of things of how we're trying to reach out without creating more segments, as much as like, okay, this is what I know. I can help you with this. What do you know? All right, let's partner up and make it happen. And that's been the newest trend. And I feel like that's one of the only things I have to thank COVID for, because we have to get really creative, and we can't just be like, oh, let's throw a party,
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah, no, I would love to tag on to that. I think I've seen a similar shift in our group, where in the past it was, what events can we participate in, what events can we throw, like either attending like conferences, or you know, like Game Devs of Color in New York, and you know, like there's clearly an impact that we have, but it isn't always very tangible or obvious or something that we see, you know, immediately. But I think now, at least for me, my mentality has shifted from those events as well to, so if I can't see people in person and kind of foster, you know, an ambiance where we all like want to connect and share and la la la, like how do I attack more like systemic issues, or the things that are harder to see, especially, you know, with like budget, right? Like it's so much harder to justify, yeah, I would really like this many thousands of dollars to do this event that is no longer in person and no longer actually needs catering or whatever, right? So for me, I don't know, like COVID's different for everyone. I know that I'm in a very privileged position and have, you know, thankfully been able to work from home and focus on my own personal projects and my own like growth as a person. But you know, there's a lot of folks who like don't have that, as I'm sure y'all are well aware. So that was also something that we were thinking about, is okay, like what are the systemic issues, and like what are the needs of the people right now? Like if you're an indie developer, you're probably like, crap, I like, how am I supposed to like sustain myself if, you know, like my job isn't a thing anymore, or, you know, like it isn't fulfilling all the needs that I have now in the quarantines, while also, you know, pursuing this passion. So we're investigating things like grants, you know, for people who have to take care of someone who's elderly, or their kids who are at home. Like that's a huge issue for parents right now. So how do we, you know, continue to give the advice of, hey, like, you know, you should participate in game jams and just, you know, go build a game if you want to work in games. But, you know, like also, you know, deal with the rest of your life that is now like, you know, 10, 20 times harder than it already was, especially if you're like first generation or a single parent or whatever. Like we were already setting a bar like very high, and, you know, very gatekeepy in a way. I guess that's what I'm trying to say. Not so much that the bar was high, but that it's very exclusive in some ways. So now that we're kind of all in a little bit more of a level playing field, and because we're all stuck inside in that way, like how can we offer opportunities to people or relief to people, while also still, you know, making sure that our community is, that sense of community is still there. So, you know, like again, creating grants for developers to, you know, I don't know, build their game or get it started or finish it up or something, you know, or, you know, giving them, again, financial aid to then attend a game jam or a conference or something, you know. But also, how do we, as a part of our engagements internally, how do we also like try to give back? So, for example, early on, we had an art class. I have a friend who's an artist. He's amazing, Che Lopez up in Seattle. And he, I mean, like, I don't know what his financial situation is, but I was like, you know what? It's probably really hard for people to join a watercolor class when it's not in person, or like you might not be willing to try it. So I said, you know what? Hey, if you're up for it, like, we'd love to have you for, you know, an hour or an hour and a half class at Xbox, and, you know, we will like pay for it, of course. And, you know, like, it was a small thing that we did, but hopefully it helped him out. But at the very least, you know, it like raised awareness to like, there's, you know, opportunities right in our own homes to, you know, bring us together, but also remember that there's more than us, right? So.
Mhm.
I love that so much. I'm like, you're giving me a lot of ideas. Like I spoke to Gabby a lot actually when we were starting up the Black Take Two group, and she just like walked me through like how to start an ERG, and like that I need that we need an executive sponsor, and like just like a bunch of different ideas of how we can structure a group. And one way we've done it is we've come up with committees, and then we have committee leads within the committees as well. So we have like a philanthropy, like, and mentorship committee. We have like a sponsorship and partnerships. We have a programming for like events committee, and then we have like the board leads and stuff too. yeah, like to stay engaged during quarantine, it's been very interesting because I felt like we kind of went into a hole after like our whole, like, we got the statements out, like, and, like we got Take Two behind it, everything, of course, and they supported us. Then we went into lab, like, okay, how do we structure our group? Then we were kind of seeing that we were just like working so much and we were like, we need a little bit of fun. So that's when we organized like a game night where we played like, we played this game called Culture Tags, which was kind of like taboo for Black culture, and it was just it was all done virtually, and we engaged folks by sending people gift cards for food and for drinks if they like, and then even we're trying to do something, at least one fun activity, I guess, like once a month. So like even this upcoming, or this month right now, we're playing, like I said, the homecoming, which is kind of like, and like in remembrance of like the HBCU experience, because because homecoming is canceled this year. So with that, we're going to be doing like a virtual like silent disco party situation. So like just
Are
fun
you going to be
things
the
to
DJ?
They don't know about my DJ skills yet. They don't know about DJ Not Again Gent. No, I'm kidding. But yeah. um, I did offer to make part of the playlist, yes, though. But yeah. But yes. But like that's like we'd have breakout rooms where people can go listen to different, music from like, like the, just like being Black, like Afro beats, like R&B, hip hop if they choose, and then also just other fun ways like maybe mini games and stuff like that, while also learning about our group, our mission, our values, and what we have planned. Like aside from the fun stuff, we're definitely planning for more like T2 wide, like Take Two wide, like panel discussions to just really like talk about diversity, equity, and inclusion. That also includes conversations with allies, and we definitely have some great allies at Take Two. Like we have a Take Two events team that has been like instrumental in a lot of just logistics, that like we got a T-shirt, getting a logo, and like just things that you sometimes you forget about when like starting up an ERG. Yeah, I think that's it for me.
Yeah, for us, it was initially difficult figuring out how we would go from, physical program planning to, okay, we're virtual, we can't see each other in person. Because when we started out last year, all of our events were in person. We'd have a Friendsgiving potluck, we'd have, social gatherings. We did like a Lunar New Year event where we brought somebody from the Wing Museum to speak about Lunar New Year and the history, and we had food. We did an in-person Black History Month where one of our co-leads, she went to go see Martin Luther King Jr.'s home, and she like learned so much about his history. So she shared that, and she also made her own Southern food for that. And so like hundreds of people were going to those. And then we had COVID and we were all virtual, and we weren't able to do those types of events anymore. So we had to go virtual. And what's been cool is that so we use Microsoft Teams at our work, and so usually somebody will bring in a speaker. Like we had there are these two writers, Kay Tempest Bradford and Nisi Shaw. They work with this group. They run this group called Writing the Other, where they teach people how to write about cultures and people that aren't their own. And they did our cultural appropriation workshop. And what was great about that was that even though it was virtual, it felt really personal because we were all in the chat, like snapping, sharing things. We could raise our hand and like ask questions and stuff like that. I learned what Columbusing is. It was really great. For Columbusing, what that was I was asking about.
Yeah, I was like,
Yeah.
So what happened was, for that, I asked this question. I was like, I'm trying to understand these feelings I have, these complicated feelings, because, for example, there was a story of this like white woman who went to India and discovered chai tea and brought it back to America and was like, I brought chai tea to you. Here's my bottled chai tea. And like similarly, there was these like two like recent college grads who went to Bali, and they were like, wow, we've discovered these like Balinese bags. We are going to we're gonna bring those back to America and sell them for way more. And And I'm like, why do I have these weird feelings about these businesses? And so I learned that Columbus King is basically, you know, in this, like Christopher Columbus, it's discovering things that, you know, you can't discover because they've already existed. And so it was great because like in the chat, a lot of people didn't know what that was, and we were just like having a great conversation in there. So that was good. And then similarly, even just facilitating discussions with other people in video conferencing has been great. Because like, for example, one of my co-leads, Sylvia, like during June, during all of the Black Lives Matter movement, you know, like at the beginning, a lot of people were sad at work and we weren't sure what to do. And so she led this really personal meeting where she shared video clips, she read articles, she shared stories, and then invited other people to speak. And during that, there were some people who were really brave, and we had an emotional conversation. And what was great was that, you know, we don't have a lot of Black employees at Wizards of the Coast, but it was so powerful to have them speak and also to have everyone come together and be allies and want to be together and figure out what we can do. And even for me, like during that month, you know, we had a town hall, and like I was scared. I was actually scared because, you know, these are all my coworkers. This was not specifically this employee resource group, but we were having a town hall to talk about the issues. And I was really glad that we did. And so I wrote this statement that I had to read, and I did it because I felt like if I'm feeling afraid, other people are afraid. And maybe if I read this, you know, even if I read this in like my sad tone, and I like cried on this call and it was really hard, maybe it'll empower other people to speak up and care about this. And what I noticed was that after I was vulnerable, after one of my coworkers was vulnerable and sharing the stories that we had, other people in many of our like company meetings are now they're a lot more courageous, and they're willing to speak their mind and ask the important questions like, you know, how are we performing? Like, how many people of color do we have? What are we doing to get better? What can we do? Rather than like staying inside and like feeling sad and just wishing that something would happen.
There's one thing that I kind of want to come back to that you said, and maybe elaborate a little bit more on that. Like, I think something really interesting that's coming out of these ERGs is sort of this creation of safe spaces for our communities. Like, I know that if I post something in our ERG, I know if I say something in our ERG, because we're all together, and the purpose of ERG is understanding as well. Understanding each other, other people understanding us and what we live through. It's provided a place for us to tell our stories and our experiences. In June specifically, when we were, you know, May, June, when the protests were going on, there were a lot of people just coming forward with like, hey, like this has been my experience with me being Black in America. Now for this week, I believe it's coming out week. I'm not sure. And I know that some people in our LGBT community are talking about their coming out stories and being very, very vulnerable about it as well. And it just gives you, it makes you realize, even if you are a person that's in a minority community, you are still realizing that there are actual people out here, and these are their lives, and these are their experiences, and this is why they're doing the things that they do. So much so that I remember with our Wolfpack group, a lot of the senior leads and the C-suite folks like actually sat down with the women in Wolfpack to just discuss different things that were going on as well. And it was very personal. It was very, they were heard. They were definitely heard. And a lot of action came out of that as well. And it's a good way to have that safe space and to be vocal as well. And that's something that I've enjoyed about the ERGs.
I don't know if anybody else has had the same experience I have, but having these safe spaces actually help me be more open and honest with my identity. I went through this whole process where I looked at my first team was specifically a Latin American team, but outside of that bubble, everybody else was white and very, very American and very, very not like me. And I went through this process of almost trying to make myself fit that mold. And as I started meeting more people who had similar stories of mine, I started reclaiming my identity and just being proud of who I was. And instead of trying to fit into this mold, it was no, here's who I am. I don't fit it, but I have a valuable story and a valuable voice and opinion to share. One of the things that we did early on, so my group was actually created late February. I think we had our first meeting. Our first meeting was the week after March 13th. So COVID is all that we have known. And if there's anything that we've learned in the year 2020 is flexibility. And one of our first activities was actually listening sessions, and they were incredibly powerful. Um, I used to think like yes, I understood that people out there were having their own battles and their own things that they were fighting against, but hearing those stories helped me understand that I'm not alone in wanting more diversity. I'm not alone in wanting more representation. It also helped me kind of solidify that yes, this is where I want to be. And one of those important things um, about the listening sessions, especially I think for us that we're part of the leadership, is leading by example. I like Victoria, I wrote out what I wanted to say. I'm a big crier, so like one sentence in and I was already crying. But I got a couple of people who actually sent me a message and said, "Hey, thank you. It felt like you made it safe to talk," and it was really really awesome to just see everybody sharing those experience and being comfortable with being vulnerable.
Wow. I had a very, very similar experience. So I love hearing that. Like, yeah, I had a lot of people come up to me afterwards and just tell me thank you for just sharing a lot of like what I was feeling because for me, like at work, I feel like I get into this very like logical, rational mode, like where I'm just like work, and just focus. So it was actually really difficult for me to be more emotional and vulnerable. Um, but I think a lot of my coworkers, them just hearing what I was experiencing and them not just reading it, but me telling them exactly how I was feeling that I'm not feeling good and I don't feel great like, today. And um, I think that helped them understand a lot of what it just helped them understand from more of a personal standpoint. And the same thing, like you said, just like encouraging other people to speak up, people who normally wouldn't speak up. And I'm one of those people. I'm kind of like, usually like the more kind of quiet, like, like to let other people just, talk. So it's like I feel like I've been being pushed more to the front now. But a lot of people just came up to me afterwards and just said thank you. And even when we went to go speak to the CEO, it was me and another one of my colleagues. His name is Bertram Hudson. Um, we were like we had to be the voice of the Black Take Two group, and that was it was a really powerful moment that I mean him and I like came up with a script within like 2 hours of having to meet with the CEO because the meeting got turned around so fast, and we had like a basic script, and we were like we really have to communicate how we're feeling to the CEO, like this is like gonna be kind of crazy, but because we weren't sure, like we weren't sure how we were going to be perceived, how we were going to be if like if everyone was going to be receptive, and he was, thankfully, and just and obviously very empathetic um and just very real with us, just about like how he and his team also plan to help us going forward. And with this too, like I'm hoping that our group will, like, we're the second ever ERG at Take Two. There's only like a Take Two women's group and now the Black Take Two group. So I'm really hoping that our group is going to push for more ERGs. So like a Latinx group, Asian Pacific Islanders, etc. Like I just like really would love to see that. And then be able to form a coalition, like, and do like really awesome, cool events, like, so events and create cool spaces. So, yeah.
I
There
feel
was
like
two really. Go ahead. Please.
I was gonna say, I feel like the most successful things that we've done have evolved around people's stories. So we have, our marketing team has done this great job with doing developer profiles, and they kind of hone in on our devs and what they do with work. And so an idea came up. It was actually during Island Pacific Islander Month, where we were like, what if we interviewed our Asian Pacific Islanders and they told us their story? So it's not work related. I mean, we'll have, we can ask them something about work, but it's not about work. It's just about them. Like, tell us your story. And so we put it in our director had put it into like a Word doc, and then we transformed it into a magazine just to make it more fun to read with pictures. And it was really cool to see people that you might walk by pre-COVID. You definitely don't talk about childhood, and you're seeing their baby pictures, and you're seeing where they actually came from, and they're sharing their stories of how they got to where they are. And so we ended up doing that again for Hispanic Heritage Month. And so, I would rather put other people in the spotlight. So I will make you look great. This for me right now is weird. I'm normally like in the back. But so for this month, I was like, all right, like I feel weird asking people to do something I'm not willing to do. So I was like, here are the interview questions. Here's how I answered them. Here are my pictures. If you would like to participate, please send me your things. And it was very cool to see how some people, and I was the first, so I kept it very standard. Here's where I grew up. Here's what I did. Here are a couple really funny pictures of me as a child. Nothing's changed. Little things like that. And then watching that baseline grow. Like, we had one of our developers that was just like, here's the struggle of where I grew up. Here is why we came to the United States. Here are some of the pictures of what this means. And we were able to compile all of it into this magazine and then send it out to the studio. And the reactions from that, I feel like just people being able to, I had our studio head reach out to me directly, and he was like, that is amazing. I would have never known that about you. And for that specific, it was a funny story about my mom and video games, but that's a whole other topic. But it was just, it's very cool to see what happens when you ask someone to open up. You open up first, and then you're just like, despite what we do, which, we're all here because we love it, this is me. Like, this is me without all of these extra things that I do for work every day. And it's been cool. I feel like that's been some of the most successful things we've done, is whenever we can spotlight those individuals for the individuals that they are, not for what they bring to the company. But yeah.
Yeah, I think you actually covered what I was going to kind of bring up, which is this idea
Sorry.
that no, it's perfect. I love it. It's great. It's all like flowing together really nicely.
Yes.
The idea that and from what I'm like kind of gathering from this, an ERG is also like an opportunity for people who might not necessarily be in a leadership position or be elevated to kind of represent the studio to do that. And it seems like a really important part of it, right? Like you're saying, Erica, yourself, that like you wouldn't put yourself out there like this if you didn't have this opportunity or something like this, or focus on you. And I think it seems like a really important part of it, that when you talk about more businessy terms about like the value proposition of an ERG, like this seems like an amazing one where people are getting experience leading and representing themselves and putting themselves out there. It seems like a really, really amazing part of it. Anyone else want to talk about that? But it kind of just flowed super nice. Go ahead.
Yeah, actually, I was totally gonna hijack your next question, because I had a question that I was thinking of as we were going, but I think it's related, right? I absolutely think that these types of roles kind of thrust you into a leadership position, and at least I didn't know what all that would entail until I was here and doing it and being like, oh, I'm responsible for that, or oh, you're asking my opinion on that, okay. And so my question was around, so I know that we all kind of have community and outreach and partnerships and event planning and all these things, but my question was, how do your groups impact kind of the product or the business that you're a part of too? Because I think, I don't know if it's a goal of any of your groups, but what I've seen, again, being that leader that is kind of in like the room where it happens sometimes, is that you get to see, all these songs are in my head all the time, guys. But you get to kind of see like, what are the questions that people have when they're, starting a new game? or they have a new character, or they're trying to say, hey, like we want to post this article to the world. Did we do it right? Or hey, here's this, you know, unreleased feature or mechanic that we're like want to test out or whatever, and we want to make sure that it's inclusive for more people. So yeah, like we have like a feedback crew established with all of our different Gaming for Everyone communities. So there's a place where people can go and reach out for that. We've had community members say, hey, like my team's working on this project. I got permission to ask you all, what do you think? And what feedback do you have? Because again, like as a leader, you still only have your own one perspective, right? It may be like more different than the ones around you because you're the only one or something, but there are other people who can lend a completely different experience. Like I grew up in the United States. So someone from Mexico is going to have a completely different opinion probably from what I have to say. But like all of those are valuable, and you know, you kind of become the point person to kind of direct queries like that to your community or to a specific person who has that experience or something. So I'm just very curious to see how else are you all using your leadership to impact your business products.
I can speak a little bit to that one, if it's okay. So right now on my team, we're doing a big push on accessibility and integrating accessibility into our design process. We want, specifically me as a UX designer, like accessibility is kind of really always on top of mind, and whenever I'm in meetings, I'm always like, have we thought about this? Especially for a Niantic game where you have to be outside, where you have to be doing things outside, and not everyone can be outside. So one of the things we've done, you know, we have the accessibility channel and it's starting up, and now it's an actual ERG, is actually tapping into the resources that are from the dev side into the ERG to see like, hey, can we have your guys' perspective on what this design feels like for you? You as someone who is colorblind, someone who is differently abled. I know we have one person who has trouble with their hands and they can't do certain actions, like for example, within Pokemon, because it causes pain in their hands. With the product that we're working on now, like, what do you think? How do you feel about these mechanics and these things? How does it impact you? And getting that perspective that we just, you know, we kind of go through features and we don't really think about a lot of these things until we have that person come in and be like, that's going to be an issue. And we're tapping into the ERG to be able to do that. Another one that I think our company did, I think this week, they reached out to Nianticos to ask us about representation in a game, specifically Latin American representation for a product. And that conversation is I'm looking forward to that one quite a bit.
Yeah, for us, I think that our group formed in part because we work on the product, and the people who were meeting together, like we're all in Magic R&D, and we wanted to have conversations about like how we can have more diversity in Magic. So it's something that's always been top of mind. And with our ERG, we've been trying to figure out like a balance between those different missions that I mentioned earlier, right? Like community, career development, advocacy, and figuring out, right, like there's us employees internally, there are the players, you know, externally, there's also the product itself. And so we've positioned ourselves as a group that's available and very interested in talking to any product owners, like anyone who's working directly on products at our company. You know, if they have questions, if they want to consult us, they can come and talk to us. And so what's been really great is not just for Wizards of Color, but also for our LGBTQ group and our women's group. There are people who make characters or who create worlds or who create stories who have come to us and looked for people who are experts or who have that lived experience to help them with those with the creation of those like characters and worlds and stories. And in addition to that, like when we had that cultural representation and game design workshop, that was my colleague, James Mendez Hodes, and he's also a cultural consultant and game designer. And I was just like, we should use cultural consultant, you know, like if our internal employees are tired, you know, we don't have a full-time like ability to do all the work that needs to be done, you know, just like hire cultural consultants. So that's been great. But just like speaking from me, from what I do in my day-to-day job, not specifically working on the ERG, there are like so many problems with trying to get people of color represented in games. Like if you write an art description or an art brief, most of the time people don't think to include race or gender or anything really. You know, they'll just like describe kind of what it looks like, and then you end up with a white person all the time, right? And even one time we were like, you know, Hispanic male, you get like the whitest possible version that you can get. You know, if you ask for a black person, they'll be like, here's this white person, but we'll like make their skin color black. And so, you know, we've had to have those important conversations where we're like, okay, we know that we have artists from all around the world. Some of them may live in homogenous communities. What can we do better to give them resources so they understand what we're trying to look for? Because we know it's not always their fault, right? Like in art, and specifically in fantasy art, you know, it's really rooted in, you know, Lord of the Rings, you know, Tolkien, and, you know, white Eurocentric stuff. So everyone always might think, you know, like, okay, I'm an artist. They probably just want white people on this art. And I think one of the most important parts of our ERG is encouraging people like, hey, if you work on those products, or if you're in a meeting where you see those products and something doesn't look right, or it's like looking too white, you should say something before it's too late, because otherwise we're going to put this out there and there are going to be many, many players who will be sad because they will continue to not see themselves that frequently in our products, or they might see a representation of themselves that falls flat because it wasn't actually created by somebody from that background.
Absolutely. I feel like we've kind of positioned ourselves in a place where we are being known for our feedback. And it's been really neat. And I don't know if this would have happened. I don't know if it would have happened this way if we were still in the studio. And I say that because some of these people that I've heard voice their opinions, which are very direct, and it's one of those things where when they say it, I'm like, well, here we are, we're doing this. I feel like it's almost kind of given them, it's interesting because we've been able to kind of see this shift of, well, we're not really representing, or we haven't been able to represent, and here are the issues, and you kind of spin this wheel where you're just constantly going over the same topics and you're struggling with the same thing over and over again. But it's been cool to see how Kaleidoscope as a whole has kind of been able to position themselves in a place where if someone has a question where they want honest feedback, they want to know exactly what we think, then they can hop into that group, ask their questions, and no one is holding back. They're going to tell them exactly what they think. They're going to kind of point out some of those questions, challenge them a little bit, which I don't know if that's ever happened before. And so it's been really neat to see how it's developed, and it's slow growing, but I feel like it's one of those things where it's definitely happening more and more, where we're being recognized for our feedback. Especially when they're saying, hey, we're trying to do something specific. Does this fit? And that part's been cool, because I also feel like it really does start tying in that dev work with diversity and inclusion and how all that fits together.
Cool. So we have like 5 minutes. We're right at the end. I know we wanted to leave some room for Q&A, and I have a few listed here. But one thing I wanted to cover really fast, which is I think just a general question that I would ask all of you. Does anyone have any tips for people who want to start ERGs at their studio? Like how does someone go about doing that? Or, does anyone kind of like want to, there's probably people watching who are thinking, I want to do this. And I'm curious to hear what the guidance would be.
If you have a head in D&I, that's the most direct person to go to. If you don't, I would suggest maybe a manager or a studio lead would be a good person to go to. Have that discussion. I think it was Erica, I'm not sure, I don't remember, who kind of mentioned how that their ERG formed. It was literally like, hey, is it okay for us to sit down and just kind of have this group going? And then, sorry, I think it was Victoria. And then they were given the thumbs up and they just went ahead and made it. Like, as long as you have that initiative there, it's like, I really want to sit down with other people and do these things and create the change that I want to see, do it. I mean, if they say no, I don't know. That to me sounds. I don't think they would say no. That's the thing.
Get out.
Yeah.
I think similarly, my advice would be like figure out why you want to do it. I think one thing that can maybe feel intimidating is, oh my gosh, I have to like now have a budget and an exec sponsor, and I have to like do all these things, but like you don't have to do that to start, because I mean, I don't know your community, and your community is going to be very specific to your company or whoever you're trying to start it with. So like see if there's even interest, right? Like I know there was someone who came up to me a year ago or two and said, hey, like I have budget, but no one wants to do this. And I was like, oh, that's like the opposite problem that so many people have. So I mean, like it can, like our group started with like an annual barbecue, summer barbecues. That's what we did. Like that's how it started. There were probably things I didn't see behind the scenes, but you know, like other groups have started, like our Asians at Xbox group. I think they gathered for lunch, like potluck type food, and they would partner with another existing ERG, us, because we're the cool kids. But like, you know, like think about like what is your goal, like what do you want to do, and like what is like, it's just like games, like what is the smallest thing I can do to see if this is viable, and this is a thing I want to do before, you know, I like go hard and commit to this thing that I now have to run money for and whatever, right? But again, it depends. Like some companies, like Jen at Private Division, were like ready. They were like, we know what we want. We want a whole org, like ERG thing. Like we are ready to do the work, and we're like going all in. And we need your support, and we need your money, and we need your you know, people, like your high up people. So just, you know, think about why you want to do it, and how much time you have to do it, and what is your community or potential community ready for.
And then I definitely agree with. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, go ahead, Jennifer.
I was going to say I agree with Gabby. Yeah, my biggest thing is just like is yes, talking to your manager or a higher up you feel comfortable with, that you know will advocate for you, and then also HR, because a lot of these ERGs fall under HR, like HR, like an HR organization. So finding a trusted HR rep to also help you kind of bring this to life, and then like Gabby said, like you know, finding community. So like, what is the group you want to start, why you want to start, and who are the, you know, like you really just need like 2 people to start an ERG, and then like you know other people will find, you know, will find you, like you know. But it really is like, and you know, and trusted allies like HR and your manager and other higher ups can help you get the word out there about your group. But it is really just finding like a common interest, values, and then trusted folks that can help you bring that mission to life. So
My advice would be to establish priorities. You don't have to solve everything on your very first week of existing. That was a mistake that I made. I started comparing my own job with other ERGs at Blizzard that had been established for years, and that is not a road that you want to go down to. So understand that, you know, it's going to be a slow process. Be patient with yourself. Be patient with your community, especially in 2020, when everything is so crazy and chaotic. Just understand those priorities. Take that moment, as Gabriela was saying, of understanding what exactly it is that you want to bring to your community, what exactly it is that you want to bring to your studio, and then from there establishing what your priorities are going to be for the first year. And don't try to solve everything the first month, because no.
Okay, we had a question, but I feel like we're going to need more time to answer this than we actually have, which is about exhaustion to catering to allies. I feel like that's a very big subject that we could talk about for a long time. I'm going to go hang out in Discord and the Latinx server afterwards. If anyone wants to continue the conversation, we can totally pick that up there. I don't want to keep I know we have some D&D happening right now, so people are like ready for the game to start. I just want to say, y'all are super inspiring. This was really cool. Thanks for taking the time to do this. I think the work that you are doing is so important, just, you know, for like right now, but I think it's setting a foundation for the future of gaming that is going to be different and I think better. So Thanks. Y'all are great.
Thank you.
Thank
Gracias.
you.
Thank y'all.
Okay. I think that's it. We'll just leave it there. Thanks, everyone.
Yay.